Three, two, one.
What up, guys? I think this is episode 31 of DJ Talks. My name is Johnny.
Hey, what's up? I'm Dan.
So, we skipped last week because we wanted to dedicate more to making sure this week's episode was good. But moving forward, we're going to try our best to minimize that. I know it's only been the first time we've skipped a week in like 6 months, but we still feel really bad about it. So, apologize to all of our regular viewers, including you, Kevin. But we know you love DJ Talks, so we're going to make sure that moving forward, we have a few changes that we're going to make to make sure that we're going to keep up with our regular schedule. That's going to include the introduction of a new show format that we're going to try to push out maybe in the next month or so, depending on how we feel about it and how things go. But we are going to kind of revamp things to make sure that we keep up with our schedule a little better. So that is something that you should definitely look forward to.
Yeah, you'll still have our weekly, or not weekly, but our dives in certain topics. But hopefully, you guys will like it. I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
Johnny came up with this new.
No major
format
announcements
way,
yet. We're
so-
not going to say anything about it yet.
Exactly.
But yeah, when we finalize it, we'll kind of get a feel for what it's like, and then we're going to be really excited to hear your feedback on what you think of the new show. So
Definitely. And also, Happy Chinese New Year to everyone.
Oh yeah, I
Right?
forgot about that.
Just,
Yeah.
Yesterday, Happy Chinese New Year to everyone. You'll see it tomorrow, or actually today, when the video is out. But we're recording this Sunday, so
Yeah.
Happy Chinese New Year to everyone. Everyone had a good.
Yeah. But gonna jump right into it. So this week, Dan and I wanted to dive into the world of FGC, and this is something that Dan and I lack a lot of familiarity with. Neither of us really come from backgrounds where we played a lot of FGC games, and we never really participated in those communities, even though we have related experience. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But for those of you guys that don't know, FGC stands for Fighting Game Community, and this is a gaming community that's very different from what you see in mainstream esports for a variety of reasons that we're going to cover today. But the games that they primarily play are popular fighting games like Tekken, Marvel, Street Fighter, Smash, Pokken, Guilty Gear. A lot of those titles are featured at in big FGC tournaments, and you'll also see them in really big game festivals like Evo. You see a decent amount of it at DreamHack. I know they had it featured at PAX South as well. Some FGC games. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what exactly they were, what they meant to us, and then why you don't see them in the same light as you see big mainstream esports compared to your Dota, your CS:GO, your League of Legends, your Overwatch. But getting right into it, I mean, the only real familiarity I had with FGCs before doing a little more research with this topic was Melee, which is obviously huge. I know a lot of my friends play Guilty Gear, but I think that's just because like I have weeb friends and I went to like I mean like I was part of like a gaming club where like it was a pretty popular game.
Yeah.
Oh, and Dragon Ball Fighter Z also just got released. I know that got a lot of hype just before Dan and I decided to do this topic. So I think it was like #1 on Steam game sales for a long time. It still might be actually.
Literally, it is apparently the savior for FGC or something like that. It's a combination of this anime, Dragon Ball Z, obviously, and they say it's similar to. Oh, they combined two different fighting games in one. I think it was Tekken. I don't know. There was some comparison for like a Tekken and an anime or something like a Guild game, or Boo. What is that? Have you heard of that? Ooh.
No, but I kind of know what you mean. Like, what's really cool about Dragon Ball Fighter Z or Fighters, depending on how you pronounce it, I guess, is that you don't see a lot of games where the animations are so good that it feels like you are watching an anime, but you're playing the game and you're controlling the characters. And I think that's a really big thing with a lot of these games where you feel like you have control of the character and you kind of build an identity and a relationship with the character where you understand them, right? And that's kind of relevant to like a big reason of what we're going to touch into later about like the difference between FGC and like mainstream esports. But yeah, Dan, I think you're right that there is a lot of like nostalgia that you get from playing Dragon Ball Fighter Z that you don't get from other major fighting games, because a lot of people grew up with this anime and with this manga, and this is like a really really memorable series for a lot of people, where they have a lot of emotional attachment to it because they did watch it growing up and they did kind of follow it as they grew up, and it became like a major part of their childhood. So when you see this game being released and you get to control the characters, and you can fight as Frieza, and you can fight as like Goku and all these other like really cool characters, it really resonates with a lot of people, and it's a really big reason for them to want to even like consider playing any fighting game at all.
Definitely. When it comes to FGC, Johnny explained it a little bit, but you can literally think of any fighting game, and there is probably some little section or little small community inside of this bigger fighting game community that it has. So even the most obscure small little fighting games probably has a little community that are either competing or just playing for fun or having some type of prize pool towards. So super interesting. I mean, it's a combination of so many different games that's unique towards all esports gaming related.
Yeah, and I think that you touched on something that's really cool, Dan. They are a lot of different communities that are part of FGC, and you do, even if the games are really small, you do have an opportunity to participate in those communities. Just yet, okay, so I think it was like 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago, I don't remember, but I picked up a copy of Pokken Tournament, and this is a really unique fighting game where you transition between 2D and 3D fighting. You start the game in a 3D setting where you're like in an arena, you're running around, but you have like a over the shoulder view of your character. And after certain conditions are met, what's called a phase shift will happen, and you'll shift from 2D to 3D to 2D. So then you're fighting like side by side, like your traditional fighter, and then you can shift back to 3D. This is actually part of a strategy that is obviously like, it's a mechanic for a reason, right? And it's part of a lot of fighting characters that in the game, like the Pokemon, the strategies and like what's optimal and what the best combos are. And it's really cool because you can sometimes combo through phase shifts. So like I know that there's one character, a Decidueye, he has a combo where you can initiate and you can force a phase shift, but finish the combo after the phase shift, which is really cool. It feels really smooth. But Pokken Tournament's not the biggest FGC fighting game there is. I gotta like get used to the terminology, but it's not the biggest fighting game that there is out there. I literally got the game, played it for like a week, and tweeted about it. I put like a little GIF of Decidueye like shooting an arrow, and I used the hashtags play Pokemon, I think Pokken Tournament or something. I woke up the next morning and I had like 50 likes on the tweet. And I usually don't get that many. I don't have like a big Twitter following. And there's a bunch of people responding like, yeah, add me on the Switch and like, you know, join his Discord and like DM me if you ever want to play. And like, here's a link to like some new friendly videos and stuff. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't even like know who these people are. But all of a sudden, I guess they just like follow the Pokken Tournament like hashtag or something. But they reached out to me. They're like, I'm totally down to play whenever. Or like, oh yeah, I'm really new too. So like, we could probably like, you don't have to feel intimidated by, you know, being new and like not being able to keep up with competition or whatever. I was like, this is really nice. So I joined a Discord and they welcomed me, and they're like, they already sent me to like watch a bunch of videos on like the mechanics of the game and like what are some things you should keep in mind when you're practicing and things that you probably did not notice before but you should pay attention to. It was really nice. And if that's for a game as small as Pokken, I can't imagine what it'd be like to get involved in like a bigger game. I know that with the Super Smash Bros. Melee scene, so I was really lucky that I went to University of Illinois during a time when the Smash community was growing. And Dan and I were pretty like in the gaming community where like we knew a decent amount of people there, but then we also had like mutual friends that were like getting really big in the Smash scene. They're like getting really good, and all of a sudden you hear about their name being like top 10, top 20 in our state, and we're like, what the heck, these guys are really good. So then we kind of saw the Smash community evolve a little bit. I did a little bit of esports journalism when I was in college. I did a lot of opinion pieces, and one of them I got to feature the Smash scene at U of I, and it was really cool because every week they would do weeklies, which is similar to trading card games. We can go to a card shop every week and just play in tournaments casually. Or just like throw down $5. You get a booster pack for participating, and you can win more booster packs if you do well. Similar to those TCGs, fighting game communities will also have weeklies where you can just go, and you just play, throw down like $5. You'll get some pizza, you'll get a soda, and you get to play in a bracket to like win some cash from that pot. And it's really cool because I got to see that community evolve from like 20, 30 people to like 50, then 80 people.
Right.
People would bring their TVs and their setups, and they would play in the basement of our student union. So like getting involved in a community like that, I think is even more exciting than like what I got on Twitter interactions, because these are just random people that I never met before reaching out to me online, which is awesome. But then being on campus and where you have the opportunity to connect with people who went to the same school as you, who are around the same age as you, and can probably understand, like, you have so many things that you can relate to in common with them because you're in like the same area, and you kind of like at that location for the same reason. That getting involved in that community would be even cooler.
And you definitely brought up a good point about these communities as well, where these are super tight knit communities. You can join up, you can be a new player, and a lot of these fighting games, the small little community side of this big are very welcoming players as well. Obviously, there are bad eggs in every single group, but overall, this community is such a tight knit because it's such a small, almost not so corporatized or so like the LCS, where now you have franchising and everything. It has to be super professional. FGC is a lot less like every other esports, where you don't have to be as professional. There's a lot of just great people out there that enjoy and have passion for this game that they're playing, and would love to see more people join.
Yeah.
And I think a great starting point would be just kind of when it started. What I actually read up on, fighting game community started around the late 90s, and the way it started was in arcades, where there used to be a bunch of random small little arcades around any city. You're around the Chicagoland area, I know there's a bunch of small little arcades, especially now, even like Round 1, where they have a bunch of fighting games, or even if you go to random roller rink or ice rink, or even a pizza place, or back in the day, they had arcades set up in those, big machines where you can kind of pop in a couple quarters, play until you lose, pretty much, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much how it started. And it started with the big names, as you said, Street Fighter, Tekken, Marvel vs. Capcom, Soul Calibur, all of these small or big games now, very popular games that were in arcades where you could play with friends, and they were inexpensive to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, I remember going to time when you're young. When I was young, I loved playing video games, so every time we went out to a restaurant, if they had something like that, I'd always ask my parents for a couple quarters or $1 or something right out. I always sucked, but hey, it was fun to see big flashes and ultimate moves and try and see how it goes. Obviously, your little joystick, they call it joystick. I don't even know buttons play around, but Street Fighter 2, I think, was the biggest one. It was always Street Fighter 2. It was always that Marvel vs. Capcom. Always those games there that you can around. So they did a great job in advertising, or at least testing it out, putting it into many different.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. Talking about like where the community started being in arcades, because something phenomenal about like major esports, big titles, is that a lot of those games are not only multiplayer, but you can be anybody. In theory, you could be anybody, sit down at a computer, play, and practice the way anyone else would. Your only real restrictions would be maybe like if you had like some kind of physical limitation, or if you had like if you didn't have like a computer that was like capable of handling the games where like there are performance issues, right? Or maybe like a stable internet connection. But like in theory, all that aside, you can sit down at your home at your computer and like, just play, right? But you're missing out on that human interaction, that experience of like meeting someone else, where you like see the beads of sweat falling from your opponent's forehead, or like you like hear the excitement of the crowd cheering behind your back, or like your friends screaming and like saying stupid things, like making fun of you for like messing up a combo, or like freaking out because you actually landed the combo, right?
Trash talking the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's so much authenticity to the human experience of video games that you don't necessarily get with esports until a point, right? You could easily argue that going to watch these major events live is where some of the human interaction is. Even just being a player, you know, like you would oftentimes move into a house where you play with your teammates all the time and you live and you breathe the same area as them, right? I guess there's some human interaction there. But then when you think about like the average Joes and the Schmoes and the Johnnies and Dans, right? You don't necessarily get that opportunity unless you're at a big LAN event or if you're like going somewhere to play. Oftentimes, 99% of the time that I'm playing these video games, I'm at my computer at home and I'm online playing with my friends. But like when you're at an arcade and when you're with someone in real life, getting to talk to them, getting to like meet them and connect with them over something that you both love is a very unique experience. Obviously, the relationship that I have with my friends, like with Dan and everyone else that I play with, like that, the love and friendship that's there is something that was pre-established before the games. But what's cool is that when you're at an arcade, you can meet somebody because of the game, and then you can say, "I'll see you next week at the same time," or you could like schedule a thing where like you guys build a relationship off of playing the video game with each other. Being there regularly, attending events regularly, participating in like local tournaments or like even like larger district or state or like national tournaments, and that feeling of being able to of being able to have ownership of your relationship with the game and the players is something that I don't think that you really get as often as with these other major esports titles. And like Dan, you kind of alluded to it earlier, but corporate influence is also like a really big thing. I think that's like a really big difference between some of these fighting games and other major esports. And when I say major esports, I don't want it to seem like these fighting games are not major competitive games, because esports at its core is taking games that are competitive to a professional level and turning it into something that's really exciting that we can all love and enjoy the way we do like traditional sports, right? And we don't necessarily have to compare it to traditional sports, but that's often how I describe it to people that don't understand. And you can totally do that with fighting games too. But when you think about fighting games, the ownership is in the players. They know how to run the tournaments on their own. They represent themselves. They don't have to. They don't need a team or a brand to back them up. But you see it now, even when you're watching like Overwatch League, sponsored by MLG. T-Mobile is like on their like commercial branding and stuff.
Psycho.
When you're watching LCS, you have the fucking State Farm analyst desk. Like, you know, who paid for that, right? Just this morning, Dan, I was watching Team Liquid's YouTube channel for to see what their training facility was like, and they supported Dota, CS:GO, and League of Legends. And you know, Alienware branding was all over, and I think that the Alienware logo is kind of ugly, and it was unfortunate that they had such a nice facility with this like ugly alien face all over some of these windows and walls and stuff. And I'm like, this is an awesome facility. I would love to like participate in the development of that, or maybe even like run programming there. But you know, that funding is made possible by another big company that has a ton of money, where they feel like that investment would eventually get them some return, right? With the fighting game community, you don't see that. You see a lot more ownership in the players, and that they want to run things themselves. They want to make sure that they know that the way their experience is crafted is in the hands of other people who empathize. They don't want some big company just with thousands and thousands of dollars to step in and say like, we're gonna do it this way, but you're gonna make a lot of money. They often describe those games as selling out. So I think that's a really major distinction. That's really unique, because in my opinion, it's not necessarily bad to get like major companies involved. I actually really like that. For the longest time, League of Legends and LCS did not have all this branding all over it, because they wanted total ownership of the experience of watching professional League of Legends. and I loved that. You wouldn't see like the Acer Predator replay of the game, or you wouldn't see the State Farm analyst desk and like the World Championship sponsored by T-Mobile, the best way to watch Worlds streaming on the go, right? Like stupid shit like that. You wouldn't see those things. And obviously you can evolve it more to like take better care of the players, offer them better salaries, offer them longer career lives when there's more money in the scene, and that can, right now the way Riot sees it obviously is only made possible by bringing other companies in. But seeing like the passion of the players and how much pride and ownership that they have of the games, of the communities, that they want to kind of keep only in the players' hands is really admirable, but also like really fascinating.
Right. And obviously there are pros and cons to both sides as well. And in my opinion, actually, order to advance esports to a point where it's almost publicly recognized, publicly known, have to go through certain steps like this. Just like if it was basketball, they started off probably smaller, but they had to do these types of deals in order to make it more mainstream. And that's the real question is, do we want to make it mainstream? Does the fighting game community even care about being mainstream? Or is it just a community of people who really love the game, right? There's so much discussion, so much banter, not banter, but so much discussion over this specific topic of what we should do with the fighting game community. Do we bring big companies in? Do we make prize pots bigger? Do we, have this big company help sponsor something small at least and can provide bigger pieces of prizes or entertainment for a lot of these people in this community? And it's slowly evolving, I think, at least from what I've seen. Something like Evo is getting so big. Now, there's still definitely, those smaller side games that you're playing as well. And
yeah.
But a lot of this is pretty big and pretty sponsored almost. Capcom is part of a lot of these fighting games because Capcom does a great job in creating these fighting games. And they're trying, they've already helped out with a lot of this. Well, I think Nintendo started doing it as well with Melee, Smash, everything.
Not really. Nintendo's always like they really want their like company to be like everyone can play games, and it's like everyone can have fun, everyone has a chance of winning, and like super family oriented, which isn't bad. I love that idea, but like for the longest time they just totally dicked on Melee. They're like, fuck you guys. You shouldn't be doing this with our game. We don't support it. But you're right. They kind of have come around. Right. They slowly introduce new characters to Smash 4. They slowly roll out balance changes sometimes, things like that.
And they're not stupid. They know this is a huge community that is buying their game. Why not invest into this a little bit even? They're creating the advertisement for you. Holy crap, look at that amazing play, Super Smash. Oh my gosh, Melee, look at that Pikachu. Freaking, down smash all over you. I don't even know. Whatever it is, they have to know that there is some type of opportunity. But whether or not they actually want it.
Yeah.
Always.
No, yeah, I completely agree. You're right. They're not stupid. They know the opportunity is there, but obviously you and I don't work for Nintendo. We don't really have any like insiders scoop, so they must have some reason as to why they don't do it. And obviously you and I, or anyone in the community rather, will never really have full context unless Nintendo outright comes out and tells you like, this is exactly why we're not doing it. I mean, obviously if they like remade the game, for example, like Melee, for example, what if they like remade Melee on the Switch, which has USB. I have my Switch dock sitting right there, which has USB compatibility, so that stupid GameCube adapter that you got with the Wii U would plug into that. And imagine playing a Melee, the exact same experience as you had before, but like just on better hardware, right? That's totally something they could do. Yeah, HD, like super clean, with like without any changes. Ideally, without any changes to like frame data or attack animations and things like that. And then having the portability of just bringing a Switch around instead of like a GameCube, right? Like that'd be so nice.
Think about how much money they would actually make too. You
Yeah,
also
that's
port over,
huge.
and you make it cost $15 or something on the Switch, and you have a crap ton of people actually start buying this because of the they want it. They want update.
I mean, ideally, it would boost Switch sales, and then like even suckers like you and me for $15, maybe even $20 or $30, right? Buying a game that is like a really very present and holds a really strong place in our hearts from our childhoods. Like I would fucking buy Smash if it was if there's any indication that like it would come on a Switch, right? Like it's such a good game, and I this is something I've been pushing for a long time. I really hope that Nintendo puts out a GameCube Virtual Console on the Switch, because there's so many fucking good GameCube games that I would love to play on the Switch. It's a totally different topic, but like, yeah, Dan, I completely agree. Like the opportunity is there, and I know that Nintendo's not dumb enough to not consider these things. They have to have reasons that they feel are good enough, justify not doing it. And I think that like that's kind of like part of what that line of thinking is similar to why the FGC kind of stays away from corporate branding, right? Nintendo has their reasons for keeping Smash pure the way it is. I would say like pure, quote unquote, where like they have a very specific target for what they want to do. They have a goal for how they want their games to be. They want to make sure that their company is seen in a certain light and that they're represented appropriately. That they don't deviate from that like vision that they set for themselves. The FGC is the same way in that they don't want to be seen as like, well, fucking Nvidia, Alienware, and Corsair bought out all these like big branding rights and all these streaming rights, and they're gonna like pay all these players like hella money, and they're gonna throw their branding everywhere, and like they're gonna run the show and they're gonna run the production, right? And take away ownership from the players of how to run community events. So something I alluded to earlier was that, Dan, you and I have experience in communities that are similar to the FGC, and I think that's in trading card games. What's really cool is that whenever like Dan, you and I were like back then we played competitive TCGs, we would go to these really big events where everyone would bring their own deck, they'd bring their own equipment, they'd sign up and play as a player representing themselves. You would play in major tournaments, and oftentimes competitive integrity, if it was upheld, you would generally know that like the better player would always win for the most part. And they could like rise to the top in this like bracket, like making their way above everybody else. And you see that similar thing in fighting game community tournaments, which is really cool because in theory, if everyone knows how the tournament should be run, you don't need to have somebody taking care of you. You can just work your way up a bracket. That gets a lot more complicated when moving up the bracket is groups of 5 or 6 players moving up, right? If you have like teams of Overwatch players or like teams of Dota players, right? They have to move up together. It creates complications. You have to wait longer. You have to make sure like 5 people are ready or 10 people are ready, as opposed to just 2 people, you and me, like me and my opponent. But what's even more unique is just like that feeling of like having outplayed your opponent by knowing what they were going to do and then playing around it, and then like teching those cards in your deck that you knew would be good for this counter matchup or like for those specific moments. It's just so satisfying when you know that like at that moment you were the better player. And I think that that's something that you also get in the FGC at a greater degree, because a really big separating factor between FGC events and trading card game events is the luck factor. Like, unfortunately, there is a luck factor, right? For better or for worse. And I know that like everyone has fun with the luck factor. It's just that some people like it or hate it. And that's the trading card games, right? Like, you might have the best deck in the meta, and you might be playing out of your mind. But like, if you just get really unlucky with your draws, or you get really unlucky with like how things play out, or your opponent just gets extremely lucky, you could just get totally fucked just for having a bad run. One of the best players I know, Michael Broderick, he's a really good Weiss player in the world, really. He's like won so many regionals in America, and he's gone to worlds too. He said, I would rather be lucky than good on any day. That he would rather just be hot and just have a really good win streak than be a good player. And that's not something that you see in the FGC. Then, like, you see people that will always win because they're the better player. I was talking to my buddy Henry last night. He was like really big in StarCraft. He's pretty high elo, and StarCraft's player base has obviously gone down with the decrease in popularity. And he was talking about how one time it was like really late in the middle of the night. There's so few players that at his level are playing that he played the same guy 4 times in a row once, and he beat him every single time to the point where like then they queue it up, the guy just left right away. But like in that game, I think is a really nice comparison of the fact that like these two players, like there's one who will be better every time because he is the better player. You don't always see it on TCGs because of the luck factor. You see it most of the time because like I know like Magic the Gathering, there is a lot more skill involved to where or rather, I don't want to say there's more skill involved. Skill has a greater influence on how games come out to where like there are professional players that are sponsored to continue playing, which is why they can consistently top and do well. You'll see that in FGCs too, where like the better player will almost always come out on top, given the right circumstances and given a matchup where like they are in a position where they will succeed because they put in the work, because they have put into practice, and the other player just isn't quite there yet. And so when you have like team-oriented games like major esports, it's really, really exciting to see like that one player with the highlight play that's gonna like make it or break it for his team. But he and the rest of his team have to be on the same page in order for them to succeed. And like you could be playing out of your mind, but if the rest of your team sucks, you're only as good as your worst player. And you see that in stories all the time. I know that just the other day, people were talking about how Pobelter, one of the best North American League of Legends players in the world, was kind of always held back by having kind of shitty teammates. Where like he was never in a position where he could like play at the level that he's playing now. And so you don't really see that in FGC. You know, like if you're on fire and you're like shooting up through the roof, you're gonna shoot up through the roof and you're gonna be doing super well. You might take the entire tournament. And if you're having a bad day and you're still learning and you're still trying to figure things out, you probably won't, but you can come back. And I think, Dan, you also mentioned that the community is like super tight knit, it's very close, and it's very comfortable for people to participate in. I think that's a big reason why people go back. That's why people, even if they lose, even if they're like middle of the pack, low, like bottom of the pack players, they still go back because they love being in those environments. They have friends there, they have people there that they love, and people that they enjoy playing with. That bond, I don't think is something that you really see in the player base of like a larger game where that's majority played online as opposed to like sitting next to the other guy.
Right. And one big thing that you just touched on, and I was gonna talk about as well, is fighting games were never online. Similar with trading card games. Well, similar with Smash and all these fighting games. They didn't have an online scene. There was no online support with a lot of these games until somewhat recently. You know, things started becoming online. You can play against other people. But before, these used to be, you had to go either to your friend's place and play this on this Sega or on this Nintendo, or you had to go to an arcade in order to play against people there, right? And that sense of exactly what you were talking about, where you have to play and you get to see this person and you have this crowd of people behind you, either waiting for their turn to play or just watching because they love watching higher level players play, enjoying the game, excitement around them. Had to be there, and you couldn't just do it online. So that's another huge reason why the fighting game community is such a tight knit group, because you had people going to these arcades and they're creating these. Even just in NA, just in North America, you have the West Coast, you have the East Coast. They're different scenes, and then within those two scenes, you have smaller individual communities inside of inside different cities. At different cities, there's small little towns, and towns they have an arcade that could have a small little. And there's a big event that comes up, and you guys all go together, or you guys purchase tickets and buy and all go to the big event together. And there's so many. It's like a tier system. You have this small little community, on the bottom tier, and then you can up and get to see many different people. When you go to these events, create friendship, create this passion together. That's the difference. You know, I love. It sounds like an amazing way to almost start this community off, and that's grassroots. Started off in
Yeah.
such a way that creating such great friendship, seeing these people at random events all the time, and strike up a community. Exactly like trading card games. Don't have an online system. Have to purchase the actual physical cards. Go play with your friends or go play in this community. That's super cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
I mean, even now, like Dan, like you and I don't really play as often, but we still hear from our friends, like what events are coming up, and like looking for opportunities to invite us back. Like I know Brian, my buddy Brian, he's always like trying to find ways to get me back to the card shop and to get me to like just pick up a deck and just play again. I know there's like a tournament coming up in March actually. That's in Chicago, and I'm really excited to play in that too. Because I mean, Dan, you haven't been to some of these events in years, but I know for sure that like people still know you from the community, and if you went to show up at one of these tournaments, like you would surely recognize people, and that's because like they've been part of the community forever, and you're still part of that community too. So I think that like you and I are lucky to have such similar experiences where we can connect to on a like a same emotional level that like people in the FGC do. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily think I believe that the ownership of the community that the FGC wants to have on their games and on their events is something that I find a lot of like it's thrilling to see that there are people that want to have ownership of the way they run their gaming communities, as opposed to letting like other companies like kind of infiltrate them and like try to like milk them for money. So I think that eventually at some point they are gonna have to find ways to continue growing unless they kind of like are comfortable and happy with where they are now. I don't know enough about a community to like really say that, because I'm sure that there are polarizing opinions on whether or not they should expand and like maybe open up their opportunities like corporate influence. But I mean, it's something that it's a world that I really appreciate and I will continue to support.
And now I want to go into this thing now, where you've talked a lot about the good sides to FG. Talked a lot about the positives. There are still some negatives toward this community. I don't know if you actually saw some of this, but some things that I did actually see, and I don't want to make everything seem like, oh, this is a perfect scene. Absolutely amazing. That's why I do want to raise some of that out. When it came to Smash, I'm going to start off right here. When it came to Smash, Melee, all whatever it is, there was a huge disconnect when it comes to fighting game. Okay. Smash wasn't a part of F. There was a huge kind of, I don't know, animosity towards each other, because fighting games, Smash, they're completely different games.
Mm-hmm.
Smash has this completely different play style, completely different setup. Mechanics are different. Everything about it was different. And what are your thoughts on kind of new games coming up, different types of fighting games? Was Pokken still one of the, it's different too, but it's still sort of the same as fighting game? I mean, was it easily integrated? Did you see something towards that? I did know that I did read Smash what.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of that idea of having a lot of pride in what you're familiar with, and then only kind of being skeptical to what you would welcome back in. I know I've seen this a lot in the trading card game community, where like a certain play style or a certain metagame or a new type of deck would be introduced that a lot of people wouldn't be fans of. It would cause some people to quit. It would cause some people to get upset. And I think that like the distinction between the fighting game communities and like what that's defined as is like a really big deal. Because I see that I know what you mean, where like Smash is a very different game, just even visually compared to what you would see in in like a Marvel versus Capcom or a Street Fighter. So I guess I don't necessarily think that it's bad that the community has like these different like hurdles that they had to get over, where they like realize that there are different ways to enjoy the same thing, and that I think that there's also like a lot of the when they realize that the players experience the same exhilarating feeling and adrenaline that you get from like from just because the game is different and the way it's presented doesn't mean that the feeling that you get from being next to a player who may be better or worse than you, that's like a really intense match, is any different. And I think that understanding that feeling is the same probably took players a long time before Smash was really brought in. And when you can see the similar passion, I can see why that would make you change your mind, even though the disconnect is justified. I think it's kind of interesting because it's like you have a lot of kids in the community that are like a little younger, maybe young, like mid or late teens to like early 20s. So like maybe people are just like not as mature and not as welcoming to what different communities can look like. But I would attribute it to that more than anything else, where it's just like they just don't understand yet, and like it'll take them time before they open up, which eventually they did. So
yeah, that was one thing. I guess another thing towards that diversity comes to the scene. Well, I know there's a huge diverse group culture, but I also read up on some of gender and sexual harassment type things. I don't know if this comes to every esports, small little topic, and we might get into this. But have you heard of anything towards that as well? Did you read up on any? Have you?
honestly, I think that that's going to be an issue with anything where it's like predominantly male, and like where most of the target age group is between like 16 and 24. Like you're going to have a lot of immature, horny dudes that are just like trying to say dumb things or making others like you're making them very uncomfortable because you don't know how to control yourself or have the maturity to understand what the situation is like. If like a young woman wants to go and participate in like a Smash event, she shouldn't be ostracized or harassed the way she is because she's a woman, when she just wants to go and enjoy herself the way she would like the way any other guy would. And I've seen this a lot like trading card game events as well, where like literally just because like it's an attractive girl playing or something, a lot of comments will be made that would not have been made had she been a guy. That's honestly, in my opinion, like a real maturity issue more than anything else, and that's something that's gonna continue to stick around while the women in esports and competitive gaming problem exists. But I mean, I guess I don't really have an answer to like or not. I misspoke. I don't really have a solution to what that looks like, but I know that's an issue not just in fighting game community events, but just like in gaming in general, and a lot of other activities that are like male predominated, like trading card games included.
Well, I mean, that's kind of everything that I had here. Any final thoughts or anything that you want to say about the fighting game?
Yeah, I think that at some point I really do want to like go and check out like what the Pokken tournament community looks like. I know the game's a lot smaller and it's not quite the same level of Smash or whatever. I also have like a lot of anxiety about like a 1v1 scenario where like people are just like really rude or like I know that's something a lot of people have to get over. So I think what I want to leave the audience with is something that a friend of mine said. His name is Cody. He told me about a different way to approach the anxiety of performing in a one-on-one scenario, like against another player, where you can like your perspective is different to where you enjoy yourself more instead of feeling really bad. So if you're playing against someone that's like really good, or if they just style on you hard and they get like a really nasty combo off, for some players it'll feel really bad to have gotten smashed that badly, and it'll feel really bad to like not be in a position where you can meet, let alone exceed their level of play. But instead of feeling bad about it, what my friend Cody does is like he actually gets really excited in those moments, and he like freaks out and gets like it's almost like a spectator. He's like, "Oh my god, no way! He's like totally just did that combo on me," and like get really like feel really good about it, and like appreciate the combo and what happened and the game for what it is, remembering that you love the game enough to be in that event and in that setting. And so instead of like feeling bad for yourself, appreciate the other player. And that will not only make them feel good, but it'll also prevent you from feeling bad. And it creates the opportunity to build a relationship with that other player, which only strengthens the community. And I think that that's something that I found a lot of value in that I'm hoping I could take with me to like whatever my first Pokken event looks like. So
At the end of the day, it is more so the love of the game rather than you obviously want to be the best, but still just love play. Enjoy it. That's I guess how some people get over some. Share with us what you guys think about this. If you have any more tips or know about the fighting game community, love to know about it. Have some positives, negatives, share. You want to share experience that you've had in the past, been to a fighting game community event, especially if you've been to Evo. Share that, comment it, email us, tweet us, whatever it is. Let us know. Love to hear it. You will see us next time.